Deadass, I want you to really get the vision here today. Human history, it is absolutely full of terrifying logic glitches. You know, we love to think of our ancestors as these simple, noble survivors building aqueducts or painting masterpieces. But actually, if you look closely at the records, our creativity wasn't always so wholesome. A lot of the time, human ingenuity was engineered purely for pain. Today, we're opening up a visual manual of humanity's darkest moments. Think of it as a sketchbook of horrors that shows what happens when our empathy code just completely flatlines. Let's get into the explainer.
So look, you probably think your day is brutal because your DoorDash is 10 minutes late, right? Or, I don't know, maybe your phone charger only works if you bend it at that one highly specific 45-degree angle. Well, we're gonna slam right into reality here. Imagine living in a time where stealing a pair of shoes could get you boiled, flayed, or literally used as a public demonstration of civic justice. We are incredibly lucky that we weren't born in a century where you could get vapored in a medieval town square while a crowd cheered like it was halftime entertainment. I mean, in the genetic lottery, if you are watching this right now, your luck is at an absolute 100.
And this perfectly illustrates the crazy social dynamic of the time. Ancient public executions, they were essentially the original social media. Let's talk about ancient Greece and the Brazen Bull. See, civilizations didn't just punish, they performed. The Brazen Bull was designed by an Athenian engineer and gifted to a tyrant. It was this massive hollow bronze statue. A victim was locked inside, a fire was lit underneath, and as the person roasted alive, get this, a network of tubes in the bull's head literally turned their screams into the sound of a roaring animal. It was specifically engineered so the crowd could farm gory clout and enjoy the show without actually having to hear the raw human suffering. Wild, right?
Now, the dark irony of the Brazen Bull is exactly how it was first used. The inventor, this guy named Perilos, presented his nightmare machine to the tyrant Phalaris. He was probably expecting this massive reward, right? Well, instead, Phalaris was so disturbed, or honestly, maybe just twistedly amused by the whole thing, that he made Perilos the very first beta tester. Yep, he was locked inside his own device. It is literally the ultimate historical self-own. Just imagine coding the most malicious malware in existence and then immediately frying your own PC with it. Instant loss.
Okay, let's jump over to ancient Rome and see how this builds into symbolic cruelty. If you killed your own parent, the crime of parricide, the Romans considered this a massive cosmic offense, so they created the poena caeli, the punishment of the sack. They would literally sew the condemned into a leather bag along with this chaotic mix of live animals, a wild dog, a snake, a monkey, and a rooster. Why those specific animals? Because the Romans believed they symbolized ultimate chaos and corruption. Then they just threw the whole sack into a river. So you weren't just drowning, you were being violently mauled by 4 terrified animals who hated the situation just as much as you did.
And as we move forward in history, the engineering just gets more and more precise. Look at Renaissance Europe compared to 17th century France. Over here, with the iron boot, they'd encase your leg in heavy wood or metal and hammer thick wedges into the gap to literally shatter your bone. Oh, and sometimes they'd add red-hot coals just to grill you at the same time. Meanwhile, you have the French breaking wheel. That was designed to tie you down while executioners used iron clubs to systematically shatter your bones, limb by limb. The absolutely crucial point here is that they weren't trying to kill you fast. No, they specifically engineered these methods to keep your human system online, literally folding you like human origami through the spokes.
Let's shift gears for a second, away from physical shattering and look at absolute psychological terror. This is the oubliette. It was heavily used in medieval France. The name itself comes from the French word oublier, which literally means to forget. Now, these weren't execution chambers in the traditional sense. They were vertical dungeon shafts built for complete psychological erasure. You weren't sent there to be rehabilitated or even formally executed. You were sent there to just be deleted from existence. They'd lower you down, or honestly just drop you, slam the trapdoor shut, and your entire world just ended in smooth stone darkness.
Seriously, if there was a Yelp page for medieval prisons, the oubliette gets 0 stars. The horrifying reality is that some of these shafts were so unbelievably cramped you couldn't even stand up or stretch. You were forced into this crouch position until your spine basically gave out. Others ended at the bottom in literal cesspits. Victims just stood there ankle-deep in filth, in total darkness, doing absolutely nothing until hunger, thirst, or a complete mental collapse finally ended their run. Your body was just left to rot in the exact same darkness that had already consumed your mind.
And, this brings us to a really profound observation about our species. Just compare nature's efficiency to human engineering. If you run into a great white shark out in the wild, it ends you in seconds. It's brutal, sure, but it's efficient survival.
On the flip side, we have the human machine. We invent wheels, iron boots, complex vertical shafts. We are the only species on Earth that expends massive amounts of intellectual energy and engineering just to prolong the agony. It's a huge empathy glitch. While animals are just out there trying to survive, our ancestors were obsessed with making the game over screen last for days.
Let's look at how this exact idea of prolonging was perfected in 10th century China under the Tang Dynasty with Ling Qi. You've probably heard it called death by 1,000 cuts. Now, this wasn't chaotic, random violence. It was a highly calculated medical procedure usually reserved for high treason. First, they tied the victim up to a public frame. Then the executioner made superficial cuts, expertly avoiding major arteries. They'd remove muscle and skin in very measured stages to maximize suffering without causing a fast death. And the darkest part? They specifically saved the face for last, just so the crowd could continue to recognize the person suffering. Talk about maximizing the gory aura of the event.
But, human creativity didn't stop at blades. We literally weaponized biology itself. Over in Southeast Asia, they used bamboo torture. Now, bamboo is one of the fastest growing plants on Earth, right? It's strong enough to crack concrete. So the condemned was immobilized flat over a patch of sharpened bamboo sprouts. And then they just waited. Within a day, the fast-growing tips would break the skin. Within another day, the bamboo is actively driving upward, piercing through muscles, nerves, and major organs. Executioners turned a completely passive plant into an automated natural spear trap that skewered the victim alive at an agonizingly glacial pace.
Okay, but if we really want to talk about the absolute peak of technical cruelty, the detail that your history teachers completely ghosted because it is just way too vile to explain to a classroom, we have to talk about the Persian Empire. This is the boat glitch. This is scaphism.
I'm going to walk you through the calculated sequence of this total biological nightmare. First, they trapped the naked victim inside a hollowed-out wooden boat, putting a matching top half over them to lock their body in place, but leaving their head, arms, and legs exposed. Next, they literally force-fed them immense amounts of milk and honey until they developed severe, uncontrollable diarrhea. Once they were coated in that same sweet paste, the boat was floated out into a stagnant swamp. The victim's own bodily waste mixed with the sugar, turning them into a literal breeding ground for insects. Flies swarmed, larvae burrowed, and the rotting flesh was slowly consumed by maggots. And get this, the guards would return every single day to force-feed them more milk and honey just to keep the biological meltdown going.
Now, I really want you to look at this number, 17. According to historical records, one victim of Persian scaphism endured this relentless biological formatting for a staggering 17 days. Just think about that. 17 days of hallucinating from dehydration, suffocating in their own stench, and slowly being eaten alive from the outside in by swamp insects before their system finally, thankfully, gave out.
When you look through this sketchbook of horrors, it delivers a pretty massive verdict on humanity. We just have to acknowledge this undeniable logic glitch: empathy code not found. Because while the rest of the planet simply hunts to eat and fights to survive, we actually sat down, drew out blueprints, and built complex infrastructures to ensure that a traitor or a thief felt every single agonizing millisecond of their unaliving.
And honestly, that is exactly why we're stamping this conclusion right across the explainer today. Simply human. Because beneath our modern Wi-Fi, our smartwatches, and our late DoorDash deliveries, this ruthless, terrifying creativity, it's hard-coded right into our DNA. We are wildly creative. It just so happens that sometimes that creativity is deployed in ways we'd really rather not think about.
So, as we close up this visual manual today, I want to leave you with a question to really reflect on. Which one of these historical horrors truly broke your brain today? Was it the psychological void of the oubliette, the roaring acoustics of the brazen bowl, or the slow biological deletion of scaphism? Think about how unbelievably lucky you are to be learning about this on a screen rather than experiencing it in a public square. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, guys. Stay curious and keep learning.